Science and creation. How many of you are studying science? I know that I had a lot of questions when I was a student, both in secondary school and even in medical school. How do I resolve what I learn in science and what I read in Genesis regarding the creation of the world? Is one right and the other wrong? Is it even possible that both can be right? Look at this picture. Is the number shown 6 or 9? It depends on whose perspective you look from. Both people are right, but yet each insists that the other person is wrong. Some of the information I shall be sharing comes from this book entitled The Language of God, which is written by Dr. Francis Collins. He is a medical doctor and a geneticist. He was the head of the Human Genome Project, which successfully mapped out the entire DNA sequence of human beings. He began as an agnostic, which is a person who did not know if it was possible to know if God exists. And he became an atheist, a person who does not believe that God exists. But finally, as the project progressed, he became a Christian, believing in God as our Creator and Jesus as his personal Lord and Savior. Human DNA is the language in which God created life. It is extremely complex, beautiful, and it is a divine gift from God. Do we actually need to make a choice between science and the Bible? Science gives us tools to explore the natural world, to understand how it exists, but it cannot answer the question, why did the universe come into being? God did not give us the details of creation because it would be beyond our comprehension. When you buy a new TV set, it comes with an instruction manual on how to use it. Perhaps intuitively, many of us will be able to switch it on and change channels, etc. But to fully utilize all the functions, it is sometimes useful to read the instruction manual. The Bible is God's instruction manual for us. He tells us how we are expected to live and to take care of the world we have been given stewardship of. But just like the TV instruction manual tells us how to use it, but does not tell us the details about how the TV was made, the Bible gives us a glimpse of how creation came about, who made it, and why, in a manner that we would be able to understand. How many of you know what pi is? And what is the value of pi? When I was first introduced to pi, I was told by my teachers that it was 22/7. And then later, when I was older, I was told it was 3.142. But later on, I found out that it was 3.1415926. And even later, I found out that even that was not accurate, and it was more like 3.141592653589793. And it goes on and on. All my teachers were right to a certain extent, but they had to explain to me based on my level of comprehension. I doubt Moses would have been able to understand if God had mentioned protons and atoms and electrons. God's domain is in the spiritual world, which tools and language of science cannot explore. You need the right tools to visualize or measure a particular item. Some people say that God and spirits don't exist because we cannot prove it with science. You cannot see air, yet you know it exists with every breath that you take. You cannot feel, see, or hear cell phone signals, but yet you know it exists every time you switch on your mobile phone and it connects with your network provider. If I give you the best microscope and I ask you to see music, you will probably fail miserably. But yet, your ears tell you that music is very real. Spiritual matters need to be examined with the heart, mind, and soul. And the mind must find ways to embrace both realms of science and the Bible. While science tells us how, only the Bible tells us what is the meaning of human existence. Scientists are constantly stumbling upon new discoveries about our infinitely vast universe and the unimaginably minute subatomic particles that make up matter. The more we discover how complex creation is, the more we marvel at how great the architect, who is God, is. Because the probability of these things happening by chance is so extremely low. Take your handphone out and hold it in front of you. If I were to tell you that all these components just came together by chance with no one designing it, would you believe me? And yet, look at the world around us. Is not the human body more complex than a handphone? It has cells that can repair itself, blood cells that continue being manufactured in your bone marrow, bones that can grow and heal even after a fracture, a heart that can beat continuously without stopping, a brain that can create ideas that have not been learned before. And some people can believe that we do not have a master designer, a creator. Theistic evolution is the dominant position of many scientists who are Christians. God, who is not limited by space and time, created the universe out of nothingness. God, who is the creator and designer, put in place the properties of the universe precisely for life to be sustained. God allowed natural selection to occur to provide the diverse flora and fauna we observe. If we look at Genesis and we recognize that with God, a day is like 1,000 years. The days of creation can be viewed as periods of time. How many of you have heard of the Big Bang Theory? The Big Bang Theory is that the universe began as an infinitely dense, dimensionless point of pure energy with a burst of light and microwaves. Let us read what Genesis chapter 1 verse 1 to 3 says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, if God wanted to give a simplified version of the beginning of the universe, wouldn't Genesis sound completely plausible? And then, after the Big Bang, the universe expanded at a precise rate, which if at a greater or lesser rate by 1 in a million, stars and planets would not have been able to form. We either conclude that our universe occurred by a 1 in a million chance event with a perfectly aligned combination of speed of light, force of gravity, and electromagnetism, or that it reflects the actions of an infinitely intelligent creator whom we call God. What about living organism? Science is still unable to determine how the first living organism appeared. Over 20,000 protein-coding genes are present in the human body, and more than 99% of our DNA is identical, and yet we are all unique. Isn't that a wonder? In Genesis chapter 1, verse 9, God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered in one place, and let the dry ground appear," and it was so. We know that light and water are the first prerequisites for any living organism. But Moses definitely did not know that unless he was actually told the creation story by God. Single-cell organisms to aquatic invertebrates, appeared in what is known as the Cambrian explosion. Genesis chapter 1 verse 20 says this, "And God said, let the water teem with living creatures and let birds fly above the earth across the vault of the sky." In science, land animals appeared after aquatic creatures in the later part of the Paleozoic area. Genesis chapter 1 verse 24. "And God said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and the wild animals, each according to his kind." Are you following this creation story so far? The sequence is spot on. And now we come to the part which is most relevant to us. Humans. Humans are Homo sapiens, which means wise man. Our mitochondrial DNA, which is inherited from the mother, can be traced back to one common female ancestor of all humans, which is called appropriately mitochondrial Eve. 99% of the human body consists of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. All these are elements common in the earth. Now let us read Genesis together. Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. "So God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them." Genesis chapter 2 verse 7. "Then the Lord God formed a man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being." Isn't that absolutely accurate? We are made from elements which are commonly found in the ground. But yet, because God gave us the breath of life, we became a living being. Notice that when God made all other animals, no mention was made that God gave them the breath of life. And no other animal was said to be made in God's likeness. So, what are the differences between animals and humans? Animals have self-preservation as the goal. Humans are capable of abstract thought and creativity. Humans are constantly inventing new things, perhaps like our Creator God, whom we bear a likeness. We are also able to appreciate art. We can listen and compose music and paintings. We have a moral law written in our conscience, and we are able to do acts of kindness, even if it is contrary to self-preservation. And most importantly, we have a soul, and we can connect with God spiritually because we have the breath of God in us. So there you have it. The creation story as recorded in Genesis, and how it is fully compatible with scientific facts. Of course, there are some scientific theories we as Christians do not accept. Are we actually intelligent apes? I would firmly disagree. For the same reasons I've listed earlier about how humans who are made in the image of God are different from animals, we are different from apes. And where are the intermediate species between apes and humans if it were true that we evolved from apes? Intraspecies evolution, whereby animals improve on successive generations, is true and has been demonstrated. But jumping from one species to another is purely speculative. Other than Francis Collins, I have here a list of famous scientists who are also devout Christians. No doubt, some of you may recognize their names or their achievements. Michael Faraday, who discovered electromagnetism. Gregor Mendel, who founded the science of genetics, dominant and recessive traits. Arthur Compton, who discovered that light can behave as a particle as well as a wave, and he is the one who coined the term photon. Isaac Newton, who discovered the law of universal gravitation. John Dalton, who discovered how to measure the pressure of gases. Carl Friedrich Gauss, who described the law of magnetism. Alessandro Volta, who discovered the electric battery. J.J. Thomson, who invented the mass spectrometer. Blaise Pascal invented the hydraulic press. William Thomson, who is also known as Lord Kelvin, who described laws of thermodynamics and defined the absolute zero temperature. Werner Heisenberg, who is a quantum physicist who discovered the Heisenberg particle. Humphrey Davy, who split chemicals into ions. And finally, Samuel Morse invented the Morse code. So, in conclusion, science tells us that precise conditions required for creation have a 1 in a million chance of happening by itself. The Genesis description of creation tells us that God is our creator. He is the chief architect and the designer of our universe. We humans hold a special place in the animal kingdom because we are made in God's image and we have the breath of God in us. Many scientists have found that science is compatible with faith.